in Florida. I know I'm keeping my voice a little bit lower than I normally broadcast because I am, in fact, in a hotel past 11 o'clock at night. What you're listening to right now is hold music. We're waiting for an update on NASA SpaceX Crew 6 launch from NASA, SpaceX, and other officials, including the Weather Squadron, that'll give us a look at the forecast for the targeted launch, which is Monday, 1:45 a.m. right here from Kennedy Space Center in Florida. The Carolina Weather Group will have live coverage of that launch beginning at 10 p.m. on Sunday. So if you're going to stay up to watch the launch with us, you're going to be staying up late on Sunday night. I've had the privilege of touring around Kennedy Space Center for the last 2 days as a part of the NASA social event. I'm on a bus with other very enthusiastic people about space. We are all content creators, and we have been recording so much video, taking so many photos, and you're going to get to see them during our live coverage right here on the Carolina Weather Group beginning Sunday at 10 p.m. There's a QR code at the top left of this screen that will take you over to our YouTube event. You can hit that little bell button and be notified when the event begins. Now, again, coming up here in a few minutes, we're expected to hear from NASA on the status of the launch.
Participants are in listen-only mode until today's question and answer session. At that time, you may press star 1 on your phone to ask a question. This conference is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect your line. I would now turn the conference over to Laura Bleacher. Thank you. You may begin.
This is an audio-only update. Let's listen in.
Good evening from NASA's Kennedy Space Center in Florida. I'm Laura Bleacher from NASA's Office of Communications. Thank you for joining us for today's pre-launch news conference for NASA's SpaceX Crew 6 mission to the International Space Station as part of the agency's Commercial Crew Program. The Dragon spacecraft will carry NASA astronauts, Mission Commander Stephen Bowen and pilot Warren Woody Hoburg, along with United Arab Emirates astronaut Sultan Al-Nayati and Roscosmos cosmonaut Andrei Fadayev. Teams from NASA and SpaceX just completed the Launch Readiness review, and senior representatives are here to talk with us more about this important review. We have with us this evening Steve Stich, Manager, Commercial Crew Program, NASA Kennedy, Dana Weigel, Deputy Manager, International Space Station Program, NASA Johnson, Zeb Scoville, Deputy Chief Flight Director, NASA Johnson, Kirt Costello, Chief Scientist, International Space Station Program, NASA Johnson, Benji Reed, Senior Director, Human Spaceflight Program, SpaceX, Adnan Arayaz, Mission Manager, United Arab Emirates Astronaut Mission 2, Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, and Mike McAleenan, Launch Weather Officer, U.S. Space Force 45th Weather Squadron. Our speakers will each provide opening remarks, then we'll move to questions from reporters on the phone. To start, we will hear from Steve Stich, Commercial Crew Program Manager.
Thank you very much, and it's great to be here this evening, and thanks to everybody for their interest and for joining us tonight to talk about our progress toward Crew 6 after the Launch Readiness Review. We had a good review today. I thought it was very thorough, going through all the Falcon 9 systems, the Dragon systems, and ground systems. Out of that Launch Readiness Review, we pulled go to proceed toward the launch at 1:45 a.m. Eastern Time on Monday, February 27th. So it was a really good review. I'm really proud and thankful to all the hard work from the SpaceX and NASA team working side by side to close out all the open work since the agency FRR. It's been a busy time over the last week, even with the vehicle rolling out to the pad Wednesday, the crew practicing and getting in the vehicle and doing a practice run early Friday, and then, of course, the static fire of the Falcon 9 early Friday morning as well. Through the static fire, it was really a good test of the rocket, the first stage, and the second stage loading. All the engines performed nominally. We did get a good chance to go in and inspect Engine 4, which had been swapped out at McGregor, and we looked at that and no evidence of any kind of problems or really nominal performance. As we talked a little bit at the agency FRR on Tuesday, we had a few items to close out, and we have closed all those for flight. The first one was on the structure. There are some composite panels, we call them pod panels, that needed a little bit more analysis to close out, some thermal analysis and also some structural analysis, and that's closed out for flight. On the Falcon 9, SpaceX did a great job of running some additional testing on a composite overwrap pressure vessel, one bottle in the LOX tank in particular that had a little bit of blending on the liner. SpaceX ran a comprehensive test program of a bottle that replicated the blending that had occurred on that bottle, and that's closed for flight as well. As part of static fire, we were able to look at our 1078 booster and compare it to a 12th flight Starlink booster that had some evidence of combustion in one of the engine bays. And we feel like we've got good separation from that event on that flight. The static fire showed that the engine bays were very nominal. All the engines performed very well. No signs of any off-nominal performance or anything from the static fire. So we cleared that for flight as well. Overall, our booster looks really good, and we're excited to progress toward flight. This evening, we are in the process of loading the final cargo for the flight, and I know Benji will talk a little bit more about the hardware. If we launch on time, we would dock early Tuesday morning at about 2:38 a.m. Eastern time would be the docking time. And, right now, Mike will tell you a little bit more about the weather, but it's looking really good. If we launch and dock, the Crew 5 return would be no earlier than March the 6th, pending weather, to allow the handover time between the Crew 5 and Crew 6 crews. Overall, I'd like to thank the NASA, the SpaceX, and the international partner teams for such a great job in getting through all the work this week and getting through the LRR. It's an exciting time frame, and we're looking forward to a good launch on Monday morning. And with that, I'll turn it over to Dana Weigel, the Deputy Program Manager for the International Space Station Program.
Thank you, Steve, and thank you guys for tuning in this evening. As Steve said, we had a good launch readiness review, and we're on track for the 227 launch. This morning, I had a chance to talk to the crew. They're doing great. Spirits are high, and they are ready to go. On board Space Station, things are also going well, and the team is excited and ready to support the upcoming launch. When Crew 6 arrives, it will dock to the zenith or space-facing port of our Harmony module around 2:30 Eastern on Tuesday. After the 5-day handover period, which is the typical duration for a handover, Crew 5 will undock. That's currently planned for March 6th. Crew 6 will then spend about 6 months on board station, and they'll complete hundreds of important science investigations during their mission. On board Space Station, about a week ago, last Friday, the Progress undocked and freed up our MRM-2 port for the uncrewed Soyuz 69S. That Soyuz spacecraft launched on Thursday, February 23rd, and earlier this evening, it docked around 7:58 p.m. Eastern Time. Because there were so many activities ongoing over with Roscosmos in their control center, they were not able to join us today for this briefing. Let's see, following Crew 5 departure, we have a number of cargo vehicles and crewed missions planned throughout the spring and early summer. In mid-March, we'll have the SpaceX 27 cargo mission. Then in April, we'll have the Northrop Grumman 19 cargo mission. Mid to late April, we'll see the Boeing crewed flight test. And then in May, the Axiom 2 private astronaut mission. We're really proud of the entire team for all the hard work they've done to get us to this point and to get Crew 6 ready to fly and to get Space Station ready to receive Crew 6. We are looking forward to seeing another truly international crew collaborating and completing a mission together aboard the space station with the first time ever long-duration UAE crew member on board with us. Thanks again for tuning in, and with that, I will hand it over to Zeb Scoville.
Okay, thank you very much, Dana. Good evening, and I just want to express my excitement for the upcoming launch and mission ahead for Crew 6. I talked to the crew after they arrived on Tuesday. They're in great spirits, and they are very much ready to go. After arriving, they've had some time in crew quarters and then participated in a dry dress Thursday night into Friday morning. During that, they got a chance to go through all of their dress rehearsal for the pre-launch activities, got to get strapped into the great crew Dragon Endeavor, and go through the pre-flight checks involving lead checks, and those were all extremely successful. The crew spent the day today doing some routine medical checks and final briefings with management. Then tomorrow we'll be waking up around 9:30 in the morning, having some time with family, and enjoying a good lunch of butter lemon chicken before getting a little bit of rest, and waking up and getting ready to go into space. So the procedures are ready to go. The flight control team is ready to go. The weather is looking great, as Steve mentioned, for an early Monday morning launch. On board the space station, the crew just welcomed the Soyuz. They've been busy with a lot of experiments. It's going to be definitely a full house with 11 crew members on board. So they're making sure that all the guest rooms and sleeping compartments are ready to go, and we'll be filling crew members out in both the GEM and Crew Dragon and Columbus modules for extra sleeping space there. So all in all crews on planet Earth and in space are doing well and looking forward to a great mission. With that, I'll hand it over to Kirt.
Thanks, Zeb. Crew 6 brings a new international crew of 4 to help perform many of the 222 investigations during their 6-month stay on the International Space Station. Many of the investigations come from our human research programs and focus on astronaut health risks in such areas as altered immune system response to the spaceflight environment. This is the European Space Agency's Immunity Assay Investigation. Spaceflight-associated neuroocular syndrome, or SANS. This is the ISAFE investigation. And vascular aging, looking at the spaceflight environment and its effects on the vascular system. Our crew members will also be participating in a number of ISS national laboratory experiments in the Tissue Chips program. This program, sponsored by the National Institutes of Health, National Center for Advancing Translational Science, will be represented by Cardinal Heart 2 from Stanford University and Engineered Heart Tissues 2 from Johns Hopkins University. They will be looking at heart tissue microphysiological systems to test therapeutics that may be protective against the stresses of spaceflight. The crew will also be conducting fire safety investigations in the solid fuel ignition and extinction experiment. This investigation, known as SOFIE, burns solid fuels under relevant spaceflight conditions to understand how we can efficiently extinguish spacecraft fires. And last but not least, the crew will be taking some samples on the outside of the space station in the ISS External Microorganisms Study to help us better understand how bacterial and fungal populations of our spacecraft can persist outside the vehicle. The study will inform us for future planetary protection initiatives when we travel to Mars. Over to Benji Reed.
Thank you, Kirt. First of all, good evening, and as always, it's an honor to be here and an honor to be part of this great endeavor of human spaceflight. It's an exciting time overall in human spaceflight, and it's core to our mission as a company as we endeavor ourselves to make life multiplanetary with our great partners, NASA and many others. As always, part of human spaceflight is ensuring safety and reliability, and the crew's safety and health is our top priority. Crew 6 is on target, as Steve mentioned, for tomorrow night, or technically Monday morning at 1:45 a.m. Eastern. The vehicles are healthy. They're on the pad. We had a full rehearsal, what we call our dry dress rehearsal. We completed that the night before last, and we have had a good static fire at the end of that dry dress rehearsal. No significant issues were seen. Overall clean vehicles and good ground systems ready to go. Fundamentally, we're ready for launch. We are monitoring the weather, and so far that's looking good. This is Dragon Endeavor's 4th flight. Previously, we have flown Demo 2 with Bob and Doug. Hard to believe that we're already up to Crew 6, the 6th operational mission of Dragon for space station missions, just in these few short years since we flew Demo 2. After that, Endeavor flew Crew 2 for NASA, and it also flew the first commercial Dragon mission to space station, Axiom 1. This will be the first flight of the Falcon 9. This is our booster 1078. And as I think everybody knows, the Commander Stephen Bowen We're looking forward to flying him. And for new folks who have never flown before, in general, we're on a Dragon, Woody and Andre and Sultan. It's an honor always to be able to fly another cosmonaut, and for the first time to fly a UAE partner. We will work closely, as always, with NASA, within our internal teams, and with all of our partners, and we will not fly until we're ready. We won't fly until the hardware is ready. We've done multiple reviews and tests. We'll continue to listen to the data and listen to the hardware and ensure that we're ready to fly these great folks and bring them home to their families when it's time. I want to thank, with a very sincere heart, NASA for all these years of a great partnership, Roscosmos, the Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center, and of course Space Launch Delta 45. Your trust and partnership and close collaboration is everything. It allows us to do what we do. And a big thank you to all of the families of our partner teams and also our own teams for all the dedication that they provide as well. Next up is Adnan Al-Rais of the UAE Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center.
Thank you very much, Benji. First of all, I'd like to take this opportunity to thank our colleagues at NASA, SpaceX, and all team members for their great efforts and hard work to successfully complete the launch readiness review for the Crew 6 and progressing us to the very exciting launch phase. The Crew 6 mission includes the UAE astronaut Sultan Niadi flying for the first time. It will be also the first long-duration mission as part of the UAE astronauts program. We met today with Sultan. He's very excited, ready, and grateful for the opportunity to represent the UAE in this mission. This utilization plan has been developed in cooperation with our colleagues at NASA and ISS partner. It includes over 19 scientific experiments and many STEM activities and live interactions with the students. Finally, I would like to thank the team at Mohammed bin Rashid Space Center for the dedication and hard work supporting all aspects of the mission. By that, I'll hand it over to Mike.
Hi, well, good evening also. Yes, weather is lining up to be pretty good for early Monday morning. The launch weather will be continue to be great. We have big high pressure sitting over the Bahamas and Florida, keeping all the unsettled weather you might be hearing about the rest of the country at bay. And so that's going to kind of ridge up over the ascent corridor and calm things down a bit and have a real good opportunity to get everything lined up for that T0. Our current probability of violation for any kind of a launch commit criteria is really less than 5%, just a cumulus cloud, maybe drifting over at the wrong time, but very unlikely. We're really kind of watching the ascent corridor. Winds have started to drop off in that area, and that's good. And so that's really kind of the main item we'll be paying attention to. On a backup day, although the weather stays great here on the Cape and in Central Florida, that big low-pressure system is going to be moving off the coast of maybe a Delmarva area and really kind of strengthen the winds and waves in the ascent corridor. So although the weather here looks pretty good, maybe only 10% chance of violation, with mostly getting a little bit of a wind, I think that very high risk of violating the ascent corridor criteria. So again, it's all lining up for the first attempt early Monday morning. That's what's looking good, and I think we got a really good chance of everything lining up. That's all I have. Back to you, Laura.
Thanks, all. We'll now move into the question and answer portion of our teleconference. As a reminder, please use *1 to enter into the question queue. When called upon, please state to whom you're addressing your question, and please limit to one question at a time so that we can get through as many as possible. Our first question is from Stephen Clark, Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I think this is probably for Benji Reed, maybe Steve Stich as well, but curious about the engine bay combustion, evidence of combustion from a recent Starlink flight.
All right, we will move on to Robert Perlman, Collect Space.
I'm sorry, Stephen Clark was speaking. I'm not sure if you heard his line.
Hello, can you hear me?
Reminder, if you have a question, please enter *1 to enter into the queue.
I'm getting the impression that the phone
Yes,
moderator can't hear the
can you hear
questions.
me? This is the operator.
I can hear the operator, but he's not talking to me.
Operator,
Hello.
is there
this
an
is the
audio
operator.
issue?
Can
Yes.
you hear me? I'm sorry, can you hear me? Okay,
Operator, we cannot hear you nor any of the questions.
Well, this is fun. Telephones, they're hard.
I can hear you, Laura. This is Steve. So.
Yes, but can Laura hear Steve?
Great, thanks, Steve.
Oh, she can. Okay.
Folks on the line, thank you for your patience. Please stand by while we try and address this audio issue.
So things are looking pretty good for the 1:45 a.m. launch Monday morning, which means you'll be staying up late with us here in the Carolina Weather Group after 10 o'clock tomorrow. That's when our live coverage starts. Be out there at the Kennedy Space Center. I'm keeping my voice down if you're just joining me. I'm in a hotel, and it's 11:30 at night. But I'm just down the road from Kennedy, so I hope you'll come back to the Carolina Weather Group YouTube. Jared Smith will be holding things down from Charleston, and I'll be out here at Kennedy. We're hoping to see the astronauts come out of their corridors and then
hello, this is the operator.
take the
Are you able to hear
Teslas
me
down to the
now?
launch site. And then, of course, the actual launch. We've been getting amazing access to NASA's Kennedy Space Center over the last 2 days, and our video editor,
Hello,
Peter,
this is
has
the
been
operator.
very
Are
hard
you able
trying to
to hear
turn
me
all
now?
that video around for you guys. You're going to see a lot of it during our live coverage. I can hear the operator. You can hear the operator.
Hello, this is the operator. Are you able to hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you now.
Oh. We may get to the question and answer portion.
All right, so we will try again. Robert Perlman, if you are there, we will take your question.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Okay. And Stephen Clark was there as well. He was asking, and we could hear him. I guess you couldn't. But just to go, I guess this question is for Benji. We saw during the launch rehearsal that there's a new set of crew transport vehicles, Teslas, to take the crew out to the pad. Was there a reason for the change, and are they outfitted differently than the earlier cars? And what became of the cars that drove Demo 2 through Crew 5 out to the pad?
No, that's a good catch. I'm impressed with the question. We're increasing the fleet. We swapped out the vehicles. Bottom line is that, we've got lots of launches that we're planning to do, and we're looking to fly lots more Dragons. So our ability to transport crew to the pad, we always want to have a good fleet of vehicles for that as well.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Stephen Clark, Spaceflight Now.
Hi, thanks for taking my question. I think this is probably for Benji or perhaps Steve Stich, since he brought it up at the front of the briefing. Curious about the evidence of engine bay combustion on the recent Starlink flight. What did you see when you recovered the booster that gave you that indication? Was there a fire or engine failure of any kind, or is this just something where you saw something that you haven't seen before and you wanted to look at it?
This was a 12th flight booster that we were flying, and as always, we constantly are learning, and we're looking for different evidence of data and whatnot that we can see. And in this case, we noticed that there had been a combustion event where we didn't want it to happen, and we assessed that and did a lot of work with our team and jointly with NASA to ensure separation between that event and the first flight booster that we're flying now with the crew members. And we feel very confident that there is separation, that we shouldn't see that kind of event on the crew vehicle. We also were watching very closely as we went through static fire the night before last, and we didn't see any evidence either there.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Bill Harwood, CBS News.
Hey, thank you very much. Also for Benji, just to follow up quickly on Stephen's question, when you say there's a combustion event, what does that mean? Was there open flame in the bay? Did something rupture? Where did the fire come from? And also, if you guys get off on Monday morning, are you still planning 2 flights, one from the Cape, one from Vandenberg, so we'd have 3 flights in one day? Is that still the plan? Thanks.
Thank you, Bill, for the question. Yeah, I mean, you see a fire where a combustion event means that something's combusting. So yeah, there's a fire that you can see where there shouldn't have been one. You see the evidence of that, I should say. But we're not. This is something that happens and has happened before. We've talked about. But bottom line is that we isolated down to where there would be a potential oxygen leak, and you could see that, and we wanted to make sure that couldn't happen on the crew vehicle, on the crew launch vehicle, and we feel very good about that. And you'll have to repeat the second part of your question.
Just wondering if the schedule holds out, if you've got a shot at launching 3 in one day Monday. Thanks.
Yeah, no, we've been looking at our launch rate over the last. We hit our 60 flight target last year, and we're aiming for 100 flights this year. And in order to do that, we have to be able to have multiple operations in flow at the same time. So we're excited to see how this plays out and see if we are able to launch that many in a row in that quick of a time period. As you know, we made some attempts at that at other times in the recent past. But above all, the priority is the crew flight, crew safety, and also meeting our obligations to ensure the crew rotation on the space station. So that will always take precedent over any of the other flights.
Thanks.
And Benji, I'd like to add a couple things on the Engine 9 event on the Starlink flight, where SpaceX went in and did a lot of inspections on that vehicle. We did see some flashes. SpaceX has great imagery inside the bays, and so we went and looked at that vehicle. SpaceX team leak checked multiple joints looking for evidence of some kind of oxygen leak, which could have provided some event in that engine bay. It's also a 12-flight booster, so that boot that around the Engine 9 area had been flying for all those flights, and so it could have a little leakage of combustion products back into the bay. And so what we did to have separation from our vehicle is we went in, we have a brand new engine boot, first flight on our vehicle. We confirmed during the static fire operation that we didn't have any leaks. We monitored the oxygen levels in each of the engine bays and the octaweb. So that's why we convinced ourselves. And then we went and did inspections afterwards. Didn't see any evidence of anything off nominal on the static fire. So that's why we have good separation from the Starlink flight. We take the learning that SpaceX has on every Starlink flight very seriously. We benefit from those by looking at their fleet data, and our NASA team follows every flight side by side with SpaceX, and so we've got great separation from that Starlink flight.
It looks like we have one more question in the queue. As a reminder, if you would like to get into the queue, please press *1. Next, we will hear from Marcia Smith, spacepolicyonline.com.
Thanks so much. I actually have 2 questions, if I'm allowed. One is, the briefing was delayed for 45 minutes. Was there something that came up during the readiness review that you had to deliberate on longer than you expected? And a separate question, I think, to Dana. So you have an intense schedule ahead of you, and I'm just wondering how all of these comings and goings and everything affect the ability to do research, because you must have to have some quiet time on space station to do some of these experiments.
I guess I could take the first question. We did defer the conference a little bit. I wouldn't say we deliberated anything in particular on the launch readiness review. I think we just took our time at going through all the data to make sure that we were really ready to go fly. The SpaceX process for getting ready for flight is a very thorough one. We heard from all the engineers on Dragon and their respective subsystems. Same thing for Falcon 9. We did take a little extra time, I would say, on one of the vehicles on Capsule 207 in the ecosystem, there was a crack discovered around some ducting on that vehicle. This is kind of, think of it as an inlet duct to your air conditioner. And so in the ecosystem, there was a tiny set of cracks, and we wanted to take a little extra time to go through that. We've done the borescopes or put a camera in and looked at the Capsule 206, which is a Endeavour which we're flying for Crew 6, and we didn't see any of that kind of evidence of cracking. And then we reviewed some analysis just to make sure we were good to go fly. One of the benefits that I think we get with SpaceX is they're flying lots of vehicles and prepping lots of vehicles. And so from my experience, it really helps make all of our flights a little more safe, because we get benefit of all the Falcon 9 flights and all the Dragon flights. And we look at all the vehicles, and then we can make sure that we're really ready to go fly. And I'll let Dana answer the second part.
All right, thank you, Steve. Let's see, it really depends on the vehicle type. So the different vehicles kind of have different mission profiles, and so they affect research differently. SpaceX 27 that I mentioned that comes up in mid-March is mostly a research mission. So by and large, our SpaceX cargo vehicles carry a hefty amount of research. It's a really busy time for the crew. It's pretty intensive with research on board. And that's because the SpaceX vehicle presents an opportunity to fly up hardware and then 30 days later fly back down samples and results. So that's a really busy time for research for us. The NG vehicles tend to be a little more heavily weighted towards classic resupply, food and water. But again, they still do bring up new research for us. And so these cargo missions we have are really key to resupplying what we need, not just for the crew and the vehicle, but also for research needs. Of course, the Boeing, crewed flight test is very much focused on that vehicle and testing that vehicle out. But the private astronaut mission that follows that, they bring up their own set of research. So in addition to the research our crews are doing, they actually have their own set of research they're doing. So it varies by crew, and certainly the vehicles coming and going has a little bit of logistics with it, but at the same time, it's what presents us with the new opportunities and the new research that's brought on board.
Our next question will be from Irene Klotz, Aviation Week.
Thanks very much. I have two questions, and I'd like to ask them separate, if that's okay. The first pair is for Dana. I just wanted to know if NASA is content with the Roscosmos explanation of the MS-22 and Progress MS-21 spacecraft damage causes due to external events, and if NASA's requested any additional inspections or any additional shielding or any other measures before additional missions would be flown.
Let's see. In terms of Roscosmos' efforts in the investigation, it's still an ongoing assessment. They're still taking a really close look at all of the information they have on both spacecrafts to try to understand if there's any common cause or anything else that could have been a causal factor in having those two radiator panel leaks. They are sharing the information with us. One of the things that's a challenge for them is that part of the spacecraft for the Soyuz doesn't come home. It's jettisoned, and so only the crew capsule comes home, so you can't actually get that part of the spacecraft to take a look at it. And so just like our investigations here at NASA, when you have a situation like that, it tends to take a bit longer to really assess and look through everything. I will tell you that for the spacecraft that just flew and docked this evening, the Soyuz, they did take another look at it. They inspected it. They looked at the radiators, the solar rays, so they couldn't find anything at all anomalous, but that doesn't mean they're done investigating. So they'll continue looking at it, and they'll share with us as they go along the way.
Thanks, Dana. The other questions are for Benji. Can you just provide a little detail about what caused that combustion event? And if I just want to make sure I'm not making an assumption when you say that there's separation between that and the new booster for Crew 6. what exactly do you mean by that?
Sure, no, and that's fair. And I think Steve Stich actually gave a pretty good answer as well, right? I mean, the bottom line is that, there are goods, pieces of the vehicle that are very different when you're going from a 12th flight booster to an early flight booster. Like in this case, Crew 6 is a first flight booster. So, we've inspected the boots on the Crew 6 vehicle, the protective boots, and we think that that's part of the cause of what happened on the fire that we saw on the Starlink booster, the 12th flight booster there. And really, what happens is when you have a combustion event, you've got some oxygen that's leaked, and you see a flash of something, and you go, okay, what is that? How did that happen? Where did it come from? So you use all the data that you have, whether it's video or whatever else, and you get in there and you figure out where, to the best of your ability, where it came from. And then when you're trying to do separation across your entire fleet, you go and you look, okay, do I have any potential for that kind of leak in those other areas and those other boosters? Do I see it when I'm doing all the testing? You got to recall that we do a lot of testing of these boosters, particularly on this crew vehicle that we just did the static fire on. So then we look at that and make sure that we're not seeing the same data traces. We don't see anything in the video the same. We closely inspect all of the engines and all of their boots and all of their different parts, and make sure that it's really good to go. So that's hopefully that it provides you with a more thorough answer.
Thank you.
Thank you. Our next question will be from Micah Maidenberg, Wall Street Journal.
Hey there. Hey, Benji, I was wondering, how many Falcon 9 boosters does SpaceX have available for missions right now? And does that number increase by the end of the year, given the flight rate kind of goal the company has set? Thanks.
So that's a great question that I actually don't know the answer to, although it might get whispered at me here in just a minute. But it's a good question. I can tell you that we have, the vehicle, our Falcon 9 vehicle has launched, 204 times successfully. We've landed it 162 times. And we have had 140 reflights of rockets of the Falcon 9. So that's pretty exciting. And this year already we've done 12 launches. But the number of available in the fleet, I can't tell you off the top of my head.
Thanks.
Next up, we have Bill Harwood, CBS News.
Yeah, just a quick nuts and bolts question for Steve Stich. If the weather doesn't cooperate or some other problem comes up and you don't get off Monday or Tuesday, what are your options past Tuesday? Are you down till March 2nd or something like that? I'm just curious. Thanks.
Yeah, let's see. Good question, Bill. Let's see. From a launch availability standpoint and a rendezvous perspective, we do have the 28th as an opportunity. That opportunity, the weather is not looking good at all for that particular opportunity. And then after that, we will stand down on March the 1st from trajectory perspective. That is just a really long rendezvous, which we would go execute that, and then we pick up another set of 3 good days on March the 2nd, 3rd, and 4th. So hopefully we'll get off as planned on Monday, but we have some options, and then we'll watch the weather. As you start to get out toward the latter part of next week, it's a little hard to forecast the weather. So
thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Our next question is from Ken Kramer, Space Up Close.
Hey, thanks for doing this and taking my question. I would just like to go back to the Soyuz, maybe for Dana Weigel. Can you just remind us, has Roscosmos made any changes to that Soyuz that just launched? And are they planning any changes, any upgrades? Thanks. As a result of the coolant. Thank you.
Yeah, they have not made any changes to the Soyuz that just launched. And specifically as it relates to the radiator panel area, they've not made any changes. So they have gone back and looked at that, and there have been no changes to it. In terms of what they might elect to do in the future, I think that depends on the outcome of their investigation and if they learn anything. So I think that's still work in front of us.
Thank you.
Our next question is from Stephen Clark, Spaceflight Now.
Hey, thanks for taking my question another round. I think this is for Benji Reed as well, and sorry to harp on the engine combustion thing, but just to clarify, this fire didn't result in an early engine shutdown, did it? Or did it shut early? Was there any issue there? And have you seen any evidence of anything like this within any of your other fleet leading most flown boosters? Thanks.
So no, it did not cause an issue during the engine's operation. This was just something that we observed, and then of course wanted to run it to ground and make sure that we were safe across the fleet, and especially safe for astronauts. I'm trying to think back now if we've seen anything like this. I mean, we have, I think there's been something similar in the past, but I'll be honest, at the top of my head right now at this hour of night, I'm not recalling well, so I don't want to fumble that. But nothing significant, like, as we move through these, high count boosters, it's pretty exciting actually, that we can, be able to fly boosters so many times. It's a very, rigorous environment. It's a tough environment to go through for a piece of hardware, and rockets are one of the most complicated and advanced machines in the world, built by, humans. And so it's incredible to see these vehicles in their complexity go through these kinds of environments, both, for launch, and of course these rockets come back through and go through re-entry and landing. So I'm always very excited to watch as we push the boundary on these flight counts. But we do it very carefully. We do it, again, looking at all the data and trying to understand it and how it applies back to the fleet. And I think it's a really key point too. Like, we don't look at this issue, as we call it, the combustion event, or this, the fire that we saw. This isn't a bad thing per se, right? It's a learning opportunity. It's what lets us ensure that we can fly crew safer. It's what it lets us ensure that we can fly all of our payloads safer and go to that, take it to that next limit, and hopefully hit our 100 flights this year. So it really is a good thing, and we're careful about how we do it and how we learn these lessons, but we definitely apply them back to the rest of the fleet.
And I would add one thing to what Benji said relative to our flights for crew. We are certified for only 5 flights, and we've flown a couple of boosters on a second flight and 1 fourth flight. And so what we have done on the NASA side is sort of step back and stay away from the high flight rate boosters from a crew perspective. And then I would also say from a crew booster perspective, there's additional inspections, additional refurbishments on things like engine boots that happen on our vehicles that don't always happen on a Starlink flight. And so I think we have separation for lots of different reasons.
Seeing no more questions in the queue, we'll go ahead and wrap things up. Thank you for calling in, and thank you once again to our speakers for taking time out of your busy pre-launch schedules to talk to us about this important mission. NASA TV coverage for Crew 6 begins Sunday, February 26th at 10:15 p.m. Eastern.
But the Carolina Weather Group coverage begins at 10 p.m. Also on Sunday night, we'll be using a lot of the imagery provided by NASA TV and the excellent resources they provide. It is almost midnight, and I have a very long day ahead of me tomorrow. I hope you will join us for that coverage of the NASA SpaceX Crew 6 launch, again scheduled for 1:45 a.m. Monday, which means you're staying up with us late Sunday night.